Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome to the podium the President of the Washington Biotechnology and Biomedical Association, Chris Rivera.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to the 12th Annual Life Science Innovation Northwest Conference, or LSINW. I'm very proud to proclaim that LSINW is now the largest life science conference in the Pacific Northwest. This year's theme is collaboration. As you just heard, my name is Chris Rivera. I'm the president of the Washington Biotechnology and Biomedical Association, or the WBBA. For those of you not from the Northwest, over the next 2 days, you will hear from some of the most collaborative people and innovative minds in life sciences and in the world that are right here in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and British Columbia. The WBBA is once again thrilled to be partnered with Burrell & Company as this year's conference co-hosts. I'd also like to thank and recognize my fellow trade affiliates for their support and partnerships. From Oregon Bio Executive Director Dennis McNanny, from Montana Bioscience Alliance Executive Director Sharon Peterson, President of Life Science British Columbia Don Enns, President of the Idaho Technology Council Jay Larson, and Tom Hebing from Bio. We have hundreds of guests here today who have traveled from 24 different states and numerous countries around the world, including Japan, France, Denmark, India, Canada, Italy, China, the United Kingdom, and Mexico, to name a few. In addition, here's some interesting facts about our attendees this year. Approximately 20% of you are representing potential investors or strategic partners. Approximately 35% of you work for a life science company. Approximately 15% of you work for a nonprofit or a research institute. And 30% of us support the growth of the sector in some form or fashion. Thank you for attending, and welcome to beautiful Seattle, Washington. The goal for the next 2 days is to highlight the strengths and innovation found here in the Pacific Northwest life science community. In case you're not aware of some of the significant contributions that have been made to the improvement of healthcare that are from the Northwest, let me share a few examples with you. Did you know that bone marrow transplantation was first performed at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center here in Seattle, and that over 1 million people around the world have now benefited from this life-saving treatment? Cardiac defibrillators were invented by Redmond, Washington's Physio-Control in the 1950s. The first outpatient dialysis clinic was opened in 1962 by Dr. Scribner right here in Seattle. Ultrasound imaging was spun out of the University of Washington in the mid-1960s. This amazing technology has spawned a multi-billion-dollar industry, and the world's leading ultrasound company, Philips Ultrasound, still calls Bothell, Washington home. Life-changing and life-saving therapeutics like Amgen's Enbrel and denosumab, as well as Gilead's Caistin, were discovered and developed right here. In 2010, Dendreon brought the first autologous immunotherapy to the market to help treat patients with prostate cancer. And in 2011, Seattle Genetics received FDA approval for the first new treatment for Hodgkin lymphoma in more than 30 years. These are just a few of the remarkable life science and healthcare innovations that have been discovered and developed right here in the Northwest. As exciting as these innovations are, I am more excited about the next 10 to 20 years and what the possibilities hold. For example, many of the world's leading experts in oncology, infectious and metabolic disease, immunology, personalized medicine, stem cell and regenerative medicine, healthcare information technology and medical software systems, bioagriculture, biofuels, veterinary medicine reside and work here in the Northwest. In addition to the before mentioned, outside of Geneva, Switzerland, the Northwest is the nexus for global health and home to the largest concentration of global health organizations working on many of the world's healthcare challenges. In a few moments, you'll hear from the CEO of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Jeff Raikes. The Gates Foundation has been a catalyst for more than a decade focused on global health challenges. But did you know that Seattle Biomed and PATH began working on global health issues more than 30 years ago to help the most vulnerable cities around the world, most vulnerable citizens around the world. We're very proud of the ongoing collaboration that is and has been occurring between our public and private organizations in the Northwest life science community. This type of collaboration will need to be continued and required in order for us to help solve many of mankind's greatest challenges. I'd like to shift gears for a moment. Since last year's conference, a lot's been happening in the Northwest. It's hard to believe that we're still in the throes of one of the largest and longest recessions in U.S. history. For many regions, the road to recovery has been rocky at best, and Washington State is no exception. According to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, our state's and nation's unemployment rate is still just hovering over 8%. Life sciences has not only weathered the storm, but continues to be one of the Northwest and the United States' leading economic drivers. I'd like to share some economic data with you briefly. According to the most recent Battelle State Bioscience Industry Report, just released a few weeks ago at Bio, from 2001 through 2010 in the United States, the entire life science industry grew more than 6%, while all other private sector jobs combined decreased by nearly 3% in the same time frame. Between 2007 and 2010, the most challenging years of the recession, the life sciences sector lost approximately 1.4% of all jobs nationally, while all other private sector jobs combined declined by nearly 7%. Here in Washington State, life sciences employment growth continues to outpace all other Washington State total private sector jobs combined. From 2001 through 2010, Washington's life sciences experienced a 16% job growth compared to just 3% for the rest of the state's private sector. And Washington State's life science sector outpaced the national average 16% to 6%. During the most difficult years of the recession, from 2007 to 2010, Washington's life science industry grew 2.3% compared to a 1.4% decline for the rest of the state's private sector jobs. Washington's life sciences now employs more than 33,000 individuals directly and more than 90,000 people in total, and we're located in nearly 70 cities statewide. In addition, our sector adds $10.4 billion to our state's GDP and $6.6 billion in personal income, making life sciences one of the state's largest and fastest growing economic drivers. Our neighbors have also been growing. For example, Oregon's life sciences jobs grew nearly 31% between 2001 and 2010, while Montana, Idaho, and British Columbia's life science sectors continue to demonstrate a strong economic foundation for their respective regions. I'd also like to now highlight a few activities and progress that has been made in our region since the conference last year. First, Novo Nordisk recently announced the location of their North American Type 1 diabetes research headquarters right here in Seattle. Multinationals Fuji, L'Oreal, and Perkins-Elmer have now joined Amgen, Gilead, Genentech, Pfizer, Philips Healthcare, Bristol-Myers Squibb, GlaxoSmithKline, Jubilant, and Olympus Respiratory America as major employers in the Pacific Northwest. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation also announced plans to invest in promising biotechnology programs. The Allen Brain Research Institute received an additional $300 million commitment from Paul Allen to expand their research and scientific programs. The W Fund closed a $20 million fund focused on early stage investments in innovation. And in just the past 6 weeks, according to Xconomy, several local life science companies have been able to raise capital, including PhaserX, Omeros, Targeted Growth, Endogastric Solutions, VLST, Blaze Biosciences, Alizyme, Acelin Therapeutics, Kona Medical, and NanoString. Not too bad. In addition, Fraser Healthcare Ventures, Theraclone, Kineta, Infectious Disease Research Institute, and the Accelerator also made news both nationally and locally. And last but not least, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the fuel for the Northwest life science innovation. Washington's research institutes continue to secure billions of dollars in research funding. In fact, Washington's research institutes are some of the largest recipients of NIH funding, second only to the Massachusetts research institutes in the world. Now you get a sense of why I'm so excited about the next decade and the potential our members have to impact the rest of the world. The WVBA has also experienced much transformation since last year. We, like our life science sector, are in constant motion. Our mission is to help support and grow life sciences in the state of Washington. We do this by focusing on 5 key strategic areas. First, commercialization. I'm proud to say that we've now mentored more than 140 new startup companies in the past 3 years. I'm also proud that many of them are here this week at the conference. Second, access to capital. Not just financial capital, but also intellectual as well as human capital are top priorities for us on behalf of our members. For example, our MedTech Angel Group Wings has funded more than 30% of the MedTech companies that are presented to our angel investors. Our Venture, Investor, and Partnering, or VIP forums, continue to attract leading multinational strategic partners like Bristol-Myers Squibb, C.R. Bard, and Bayer Healthcare, as well as leading venture capital firms like HIG BioVentures, NEA, and MedImmune Ventures. On the human capital front, we have several initiatives focused on the recruitment, the retention, and the development of talent needed to continue to grow our life sciences community. And we also spend quite a bit of time advocating for and increasing the awareness about our sector to local, state, and federal policymakers and leaders. And last but not least, we offer our members the purchasing power of one of the largest industries in the state. For example, in 2012, our members are on track to purchase more than $40 million worth of goods and services from our 19 purchasing partners, saving more than $6 million in return. To learn more about our purchasing programs, please visit the Purchasing Partners Pavilion in the exhibit hall. I'm also proud to say that the WBBA is now one of the largest state life science trade associations. We're very proud to have more than 500 member organizations for the very first time since the WBBA was formed more than 20 years ago. Please stop by our exhibit booth for more information. We also realize that we cannot fulfill our mission without having numerous strategic partnerships. For example, the WBBA and the Washington State Department of Commerce are partnering to support life science companies and global health organizations to help maximize their success. Together, we participated at a recent Bio International conference in Boston. We jointly hosted a breakfast to introduce Washington State life science organizations to an international delegation and created an opportunity for the participants to network and increase export and collaboration activities. Similar plans are in place for Bio next year in Chicago. In addition, the State Department of Commerce helps organize trade missions with the governor to help promote our industry. I'm pleased to announce that from September 30th to October 11, 2012, I will be joining Governor Gregoire and lead a delegation of life science organizations on her trade mission to South Korea and India. I hope you'll join me. Washington State will also have a booth at the U.S. Pavilion at Medica, November 14th through 17th in Germany, and the Washington State Business Development Mission to Saudi Arabia is scheduled for December 8th through 12th. The state also offers qualifying Washington businesses up to $5,000 in export vouchers to support export-related activities. Please visit the Washington State Department of Commerce exhibit booth for more information on these vouchers. I can't tell you how excited I am about the conference this year. Before I provide a preview of the overview of this year's conference, those of you that have attended the conference here before may be wondering, why do we move the conference from March to July? No, it wasn't because of the normal subtropical weather we get here in Seattle in March. We have a saying here, summer starts July 5th. If you're local, we actually got a bonus day because we had a beautiful 4th of July. We've ordered this weather for you, and I sure hope you enjoy it. It's beautiful out there. On a serious note, it really is a long story, so I'll give you the abridged version. 2012 is the 50th anniversary of the World's Fair held here in Seattle when the iconic Space Needle was built. The Seattle Center is currently hosting the next 50, a celebration, a 6-month celebration in honor of the 50th anniversary. Each of the 6 months has a theme. June was Science and Technology Month, and July is Global Health Month. We wanted to be a good partner with the Next 50, so we looked at both dates in June and July to move the conference. And this was 3 years ago, so I had no idea it was going to be what it was going to entail. But based on the calendar and competing events, the second week in July looked perfect. So that's why we moved the conference to this week in July. Plus, the Next 50 promised that if we moved the conference to June or July, they would guarantee me Chamber of Commerce weather, which they've delivered on. We're very pleased to announce that based on this year's attendance of LSINW, we've already signed an agreement to be back here at the Washington State Convention Center July 10th and 11th, 2013 for our 13th annual conference. So we hope to see you next year as well. Since July is Global Health Month at the Next 50, I would also like to invite you to visit the Global Health Nexus Pavilion at the Seattle Center after LSINW is concluded. And please walk one of the lifelines. You won't be disappointed. The pavilion is open the entire month and through most of the month of August. And for more information, there's more information in your pocketbook around the Global Health Nexus Pavilion. I'd also like to highlight a few events to look forward to over the next couple of days. In addition to this morning's keynote by Mr. Raikes, Steve Burrell, CEO of Burrell & Company, will give his State of the Industry address during today's lunch. Don't miss Steve's presentation. It's always one of the highlights of the conference. We also have 5 phenomenal expert panels addressing, discussing, and debating some of the most relevant and topical issues facing our industry today. In addition, approximately 80 organizations will be presenting in the breakout sessions, including private, public, and emerging companies, as well as nonprofit organizations and research institutes, all with a focus on innovation and collaboration. You can also meet with each presenter immediately following in one-on-one breakouts. And many of you already established many one-on-one meetings through the biopartnering.com software. I'm pleased to announce that we've had a record number of one-on-one meetings requested this year utilizing the software. It's also a great sign that many of you are here to help continue the success and growth of our industry. In addition, don't miss Poster Rally right here outside of the main hall. We have a record number of posters submitted for this year's conference, and many of these ideas in Poster Rally are going to be tomorrow's breakthroughs. One of the most energized sessions of the conference is speed dating. Not that kind of speed dating. It's a fast-paced, high-energy, 5-minute pitch for our emerging companies to meet with potential investors and partners. And for those of you not speed dating, there'll be a reception starting at 5 p.m. on level 5, just down the escalators here in the Convention Center. Be sure to follow LSINW on Twitter. We will be tweeting messages throughout the conference. If you don't have a Twitter account, go to our registration desk area and ask for instructions from our staff. Before I turn it over to our keynote speaker, I'd also like to now thank several individuals and organizations for their support, without whom we could not produce this event. First, our conference partner, Burrell & Company, and my colleagues from Oregon Bio, Montana Bioscience Alliance, Life Science BC, the Idaho Technology Council, and Bio. Thank you very much. I'd also like to give special thanks to the chairman of the LSINW Steering Committee, Gary Kocher from K&L Gates. Gary, thank you. We've been meeting monthly since last August, I believe, with the steering committee, and they put a lot of time and energy into this conference. I'd also like to thank and recognize our premium sponsors. First, our platinum sponsor, K&L Gates. Our diamond sponsors, Fenwick & West LLP, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and Kelly Services. Our tote bag sponsor, Fenwick & West LLC. Our emerald sponsors, Med and Telebase and Graphica. And last but not least, our media sponsors and partners, the Puget Sound Business Journal and Como News Radio. Thank you. You may also notice some cameras in the back of the room. TVW is videotaping this program, at least the opening keynote, and you can see the replay on TVW over the next several days. I'd also like to thank all of our exhibitors for our support. We actually have twice the amount of exhibit space this year compared to last year. Without them, we couldn't hold this conference. So thank you very much, and please support their efforts and stop by their exhibit throughout the conference. Thank you. And last but not least, I'd like to thank all of our sponsors, without whom we couldn't put this conference on. You will see them graphically acknowledged throughout the conference. So please, again, thank you for all of your support. We appreciate it, and we look forward to a fantastic conference. A meeting of this magnitude does not come together without having dozens of volunteers donating countless hours to the cause. I'd like to thank the LSINW Steering Committee and all of our volunteers. You can find our volunteers by looking for people in white lab coats with the orange Ask Me buttons on them. And last but not least, I'd like to thank my phenomenal staff. They've been working long days, weekends, and long nights to put this together and pull this off for you. So thank you very much for both our volunteers and to our staff. Thank you for attending the 12th Annual LSINW. Please have a wonderfully successful conference. And now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Kevin Baldwin, the Market Managing Partner for the Pacific Northwest region for PricewaterhouseCoopers. Kevin will introduce our keynote speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris, and good morning, everyone. As PwC's Market Managing Partner for the Pacific Northwest, our firm is very privileged to be involved with WBBA's Life Science Innovation Northwest Conference, one of the most important conferences of its kind, not only here in the Pacific Northwest, but across the country. Putting on such a conference is no small task. And please join me thanking Chris Rivera and the entire team at the WBBA for an amazing effort in making this such a valuable event for everyone here today. Thanks. Well, the life science, technology, and healthcare sectors are of critical importance to this region, as Chris mentioned. The companies in these sectors represent the entrepreneurial spirit that is at the very core of what makes the Pacific Northwest what it's all about. Each sector is positioned well for growth in the future and for the years to come through collaboration and innovation. At PwC, we're committed to working with these companies in these thriving industry sectors and to achieve their business objectives long into the future. On behalf of the partners and staff of PwC and our friends of the WBBA, it is my honor to introduce the keynote speaker to kick off this year's event, Mr. Jeff Raikes, the Chief Executive Officer of the Bill Melinda Gates Foundation, and along with his wife, Tricia, a founder of the Raikes Foundation. In 1994, Bill Gates, along with his wife, Melinda, set out on a mission to enhance healthcare and reduce extreme poverty globally, and expand educational opportunities and access to information technology here in the United States. Since its founding, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has become the largest private foundation in the world, having grown to over 1,000 employees and sustaining grant commitments of over $26 billion. Since 2008, Jeff Raikes has been at the helm. Similar to myself, Jeff is a Midwesterner by birth, hailing from the state of Nebraska. Growing up on a farm, he has previously said that one of his key things you learn is job balance. One day you drive a tractor, another you're wrangling cows. It's easy to see why, as CEO, Jeff has been so successful overseeing an organization that is involved in more than 25 different major initiatives all around the globe. Before joining the foundation, Jeff served as a member of Microsoft's senior leadership team, setting the overall direction for the company. He was president of Microsoft Business Division, previously served as Group Vice President of the Worldwide Sales and Support Group, and as Senior Vice President of Microsoft North America. Jeff currently serves on the board of Costco, as well as the Microsoft Alumni Foundation, and in 2011 was named the Puget Sound Business Journal's Executive of the Year. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker this morning, Mr. Jeff Raikes.
Thanks, Kevin. It was very nice. Thank you. Well, thank you, Kevin, for that kind introduction, and thanks, Chris. It's a great pleasure to be here. Kevin mentioned one of the things I share with our employees, job balance. He got it mostly right. When I talk to our employees about job balance, I share with them what I learned growing up on the farm. One day you drive the tractor, another day you scoop hog manure. I noticed he sanitized the quote, but I wanted to basically share the heart of what I tell the employees. I always remind them I have a real job as well, some days and some days. Well, it's a great honor for me to be here today and to welcome you, especially those of you who are here in Seattle for your first time. And it's especially gratifying because we come together in what is a special moment in this city's history. Just down the street, the Seattle Center is celebrating the Next 50, an event to mark the 50th anniversary of the World's Fair. The year was 1962, and Seattle was presented with a unique opportunity to host a cutting-edge expo that would launch the city onto the global stage. Now, much of the fair was designed to explore the themes of science and space exploration. It had only been a few years since Sputnik was launched into orbit, and the space race was on. Now, to symbolize the fair, Seattle erected what is today the most iconic symbol of our city and perhaps of the Pacific Northwest. The Space Needle was, at the time, the tallest structure west of the Mississippi River. And it was also a promise to the world that Seattle would continue to be a visionary place, one that pushed boundaries and aimed beyond frontiers. More than 10 million people came here in 1962 to witness an exhibition that President John F. Kennedy said would open doors to scientific gains by letting us all see what has been accomplished. He called those accomplishments the bridge to the 21st century, to the time and place where we are now. I moved here in 1981, almost 2 decades after the World's Fair. I was in my early 20s and somewhat fresh out of college when I landed a job at what was then the small software company Microsoft. And Seattle was a new city for me. Having grown up on a farm near Ashland, Nebraska, I was a product of the Great Plains. But it's been more than 30 years, and I'm still here. Seattle is my adopted home. I've raised my family here. My career took off here. And even though I still have the soul of a farm boy, I am a Seattleite at heart. Now, this doesn't mean that I can tell you who I root for when the Cornhuskers play the Washington Huskies. But what I can tell you is this: I love Seattle, and I am proud to be a Seattleite. And as a Seattleite, I can say that our city continues to fulfill its promise of 50 years ago. Seattle remains a visionary place. And even though we've replaced our galactic outlook with a more terrestrial one, our collective vision is still as forward-looking as ever. We are home to many of the world's leaders in innovation. Microsoft was born here, as was Boeing, Nordstrom, UPS, United Parcel Service, Starbucks, Costco, and Amazon. And Seattle, as Chris eloquently pointed out, is also home to some of the world's leading global health organizations. And we are proud to say that many of them are grantees of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. But as a Seattleite, I am most proud of the fact that hundreds of organizations in Seattle, places like Seattle Biomed, the University of Washington, and PATH, are fast turning our city into a world leader in health R&D. A world leader that is pioneering low-cost, effective technologies for emerging markets, and one that is delivering huge impact through the saving of millions of lives. Consider this: more than 160 biopharma and 250 medical technology companies in the state of Washington. There are also 36 nonprofit research institutions here that together help generate billions of dollars in research funding every year. A recent mapping by the Washington Global Health Alliance showed that 59 organizations in our state are conducting global health work in 156 countries. They work on more than 2,500 global health projects and initiatives, and with over 1,500 unique partners around the world to develop low-cost technologies that are robust and technologically appropriate. Being a world leader in science has already given us a tremendous opportunity to leave our mark. Ultrasound imaging was invented at the University of Washington. Cardiac defibrillators were invented in the 50s by a company called Physio-Control, still based in Washington. Seattle's Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, as Chris pointed out, was the first ever bone marrow transplant. And in 2010 alone, 3 out of the 21 drugs that were approved by the Federal Drug Administration were discovered and developed here. In that respect, it's quite fitting that the WBBA is hosting this gathering, not just because it's an organization that is native to our great city and state, but because its very mission is to lead us into the next 50, to ensure that we remain at the forefront of innovation and realization, to support breakthrough discoveries that create better health solutions, and ultimately to make the world, our world, a better place. As was mentioned, I became CEO of the Gates Foundation in 2008 after a long career in software. And one of the great privileges of my job has been the opportunity to get out of the office, not only to speak at important events like this one, but also to visit with our beneficiaries around the globe. And in doing so, I've seen that we are more alike than we are different. In India, I've met with rural health workers, helping to keep young children in their communities vaccinated against polio and other preventable diseases. In Ohio, I've met with students from poor families who are overcoming many obstacles to complete college degrees. And in Mozambique, I sat down with smallholder farmers and heard about their efforts to grow more food and boost their incomes so their children could have access to education. I was even given a chance to sit behind the wheel of one of their tractors, which is always a treat for a farm boy from Nebraska. Now, while all of those encounters have been miles apart and separate by countless socioeconomic, religious, and generational lines, they share the common theme of optimism. Optimism because people everywhere are working to make the world a stronger, happier, and healthier place. Optimism because our human connectedness is increasingly more evident. And optimism because our shared responsibilities as stewards of this planet is more obvious than it has ever been. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is guided by a simple principle. All lives have equal value. We believe that whether a child is born in Soweto or Seattle shouldn't determine whether they will have access to health, education, and opportunity. And in that spirit, we fund innovative ideas at addressing some of the toughest problems in the world, providing equitable access to better health. We focus on only a few issues because we think that's the best way that we contribute to great impact. And we are able to keep that focus because we believe that very specific issues present the biggest obstacles toward leading happy, healthy, and productive lives. We also know that philanthropy is not the silver bullet, but rather a catalyzing force. Some of our projects will not succeed. And not only do we accept that, we expect that. But we only fail if we don't learn. Our job is to make bets on promising solutions that governments and businesses cannot afford to make. And as we learn which bets best pay off, we adjust our strategies, share the results, so everyone can benefit. so solutions can be scaled. Now, we are privileged to work with leading minds across science, technology, economics, management, and dozens of other fields. But our work would be impossible without the work of our partners, many of them who are here with us today. When I say impossible, I don't mean that as a generic figure of speech or hyperbole. I mean it quite literally, impossible. And it's not just partners in Washington, but partners from all across the United States and across the globe. I know that in this audience today, we have representatives from France, Italy, China, Japan, Mexico, Canada, India. I also know how critical it is that we lock arms and continue to work together. Our world is increasingly connected, and our work even more so. The Gates Foundation, we are an independent organization, but we know we cannot act independently. And that is why public-private partnerships are fundamental to our success. More than 2,000 grantees around the world help us achieve our goals. Leveraging their strength is fundamental to our mission, because it is only through our grantees that we are able to actually deliver impact on the ground. But as with any complex operation, there are challenges to development, to aid, to investments like the one we make. I often say that our job is to get results, and our results depend on the quality of our partnership. So to reach our goals, we look for good partners, but we must also work hard to be a good partner. And being good partners means listening. It means taking good feedback. It also means working collaboratively to arrive at new solutions, innovating and adapting to the changing landscape so we can together stay on track to meeting our joint goals. Course correction is a big part of the work. It was a big part of the work I did as a software developer, and it's a big part of what I do at the Gates Foundation. I think most of us here can relate to having to change lanes when things are not going as planned, when the data proves your theory was just a little off the mark. For us, it's also vital to make those adjustments based on what's happening on the ground. Oftentimes, the more we learn, the more evident it becomes that we need to shift so that we can hit our targets. Now, at the Foundation, we have about 25 long-term strategies to address those challenges, whether they are in polio eradication or family planning, tuberculosis or malaria. They outline our work and they define our scope. Those strategies are reviewed annually by Bill, Melinda, and me, so we know what is working and what isn't. So we increasingly learn from one another so that we can determine how best to exchange our knowledge and ideas so that we can maximize our impact together. Every hour, 1,500 people in the developing world die from disease that could be preventable. Every 20 seconds, a child dies from a vaccine-preventable disease. These are sobering facts, but they can serve to inspire and motivate us. At the Foundation, we focus on discovery, development, delivery, and policy and advocacy efforts to fight and prevent enteric and diarrheal diseases, HIV, AIDS, malaria, pneumonia, tuberculosis, and neglected infectious diseases. We also work on integrated health solutions for family planning, nutrition, maternal and child health, tobacco control, and vaccine-preventable diseases. But we know we cannot go it alone. And you, as members of the dynamic life sciences industry, are fundamental to solving the world's gravest health problems. Whether it's in discovery, development, delivery, or policy and advocacy, collectively, we are equipped to provide solutions to some of the world's most pressing health challenges, to closing gaps in knowledge and science so we can develop critical technologies where current tools are lacking, to implementing and scaling proven approaches, or proactively addressing the obstacles that typically lie in adoption or uptake, to promoting more and better resources, policies, or greater visibility for global health issues that affect those most in need. Innovation, as is the theme of this gathering, may be the vehicle to get us to where we want to be, to prepare for our own next 50. A next 50 that will include low-cost, robust, and appropriate technologies to improve health, particularly in developing countries. The WBBA is currently partnering with the Washington Global Health Alliance to help the public better understand global health and to help biotech companies learn about opportunities to engage in the global health arena. Together, in partnership with the foundation, they have just launched Global Health Month at the Seattle Center to highlight new technologies and business opportunities and build awareness about the importance of global health challenges. The Washington State Legislature recognized the importance of these partnerships and 2 years ago funded a remarkable effort to commercialize global health technologies. The Washington Global Health Fund, managed by the Washington Global Health Alliance, now provides funding for companies and nonprofits to manufacture promising global health technologies. We applaud those partnerships because we, too, are driven by collaboration. We recognize that our resources are only a small part of what is needed to achieve our goals. So we hold the belief that our ability to achieve impact is much greater when we effectively work with others, whether it's build a consensus or to challenge it. Our sum is much greater than our individual parts. And we have seen the immense potential of change when we sit around the table with our grantees and our partners to provide solutions to these complex issues. Now, all of you here today are in the position to be a part of the solution. The WBBA's mission of growing the state's life sciences industry can lead to innovations that will be the driving force everywhere for better health outcomes. By recruiting and retaining top talent, you are encouraging the steady growth of our industry. By supporting the commercialization and capital formation, you are fomenting cutting-edge advances in both leading institutions and startups. By providing advocacy at the state and federal level, you are helping Washington be a competitive player on the global stage. And by working across disciplines, whether convening great minds or stimulating intellectual debate, you are inspiring new ideas, new technology, and new solutions to the biggest challenges the world faces. I am a firm believer that our generation will be judged by how we handle the crisis of global health. We are making progress. 50 years ago, 20 million children under the age of 5 died every year in the world. 20 million. In 2010, fewer than 8 million children under the age of 5 died. But it's still 8 million too many. We know it will take time to realize the change we all seek. We know that we must work together to set ambitious goals and work with urgency to create and deliver vaccines, drugs, and other interventions that will save lives. That will be the one true measure of our success. 50 years ago, the engineers and architects who built the Space Needle may have tried to capture our thirst for space exploration and honor our futuristic outlook towards all things possible, and some we thought that were impossible. Today, 50 years later, the most famous landmark of the Pacific Northwest stands proudly, and it holds a renewed promise that we can solve the problems that seem too big to solve, that we can continue to be leaders in innovation, and that we can find solutions to alleviate the health challenges around the world. We can work together to save and improve lives, and that is my hope for the next 50. Thank you. Thank you. Great. Thank you.
Great job. Thank you. Please have a seat. So we're going to have some time for Q&A. I know one of the highlights is always to ask our keynote some questions from the audience. I'll kick it off. We do have a couple of microphones here in the aisle. If you have a question for Jeff, please feel free to walk up to the microphones, and we'll get to as many questions as possible. But I'll start it off, Jeff. Since 2008, as CEO of the Gates Foundation, what do you feel are your biggest accomplishments, and also what are the biggest challenges you're facing?
Well, I think of the accomplishments and then the work I must do to support them really in two buckets. The first, of course, is the work that we have to do, the primary work we do in delivering on the mission of the foundation, the programmatic impact that we aspire to. But I also know, as a former leader in software business, it's very important that you create an organization, a culture, the set of processes, the structures that really help increase or maximize, optimize the capacity for impact. So I really think of things in two ways. And I can look back in both buckets and I can say how proud I am of our organization. I think some of the work that's been done on the last 3 years related to vaccines and vaccine delivery is absolutely phenomenal. If you look back at the Global Alliance for Vaccine Initiatives, their 10-year or so history, and we were one of a group of leaders that helped create and stimulate the growth of that organization. It's phenomenal to think about how they've been able to immunize maybe 250 million, 300 million children, but even more important, say probably 5 million children's lives. But in the last 3 years, we came together in a number of ways, raising funds for the next 5 years, getting the price of rotavirus vaccine down, working to have other types of advances, the delivery of the meningitis A vaccine that will reach probably 500 million people ultimately in sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, there's just been some phenomenal examples there. Our organization had grown a great deal. It had tripled in the 3 years before I started. Fortunately, I'd had a lot of experience with high growth. I started at Microsoft when we had 100 employees. I left when we had 91,000. So I've kind of seen high growth and what happens, and we had some things that I thought that we could do to make us an even stronger organization. And frankly, one of them I think is very central to this group. When you grow rapidly in high tech, what happens is you achieve your high growth goals, but you also tend to get siloed, because what you do is you segment the mission and you tell people to run. What happens then with that siloing is you lose some of the benefit of the collaboration. And I felt like our global health and our global development groups could break down those silos and work together more effectively. I have this image of when I was in Ethiopia visiting a primary health post. They were delivering health interventions like vaccines for the children, but also nutrition information, water sanitation, and hygiene, guiding the families on how they could produce the crops that would lead to better health, so on and so forth. And so I thought we needed to grow an integrated delivery, and I felt like we needed to work together. So I was very lucky to persuade Chris Elias, the CEO, then the CEO of PATH, to join us. He now leads our global development, and I was very lucky to get Trevor Mundell, who came from Novartis, to lead our global health. And they work together as a partnership. And personally, as a CEO, as a leader, that's one of the things I'm most proud of, because that will set the platform for the work that we have to do in the years ahead.
Fantastic. If you're a private biotech, medtech, infotech company, an organization, how do you get involved, and where are some potential common touch points with the foundation?
Well, certainly, and I don't mean this to sound self-serving to you, being involved in organizations like this, which create the networking, which create the dialogue, is extremely important. The great advance of the human race has come from the sharing of knowledge, and that's true on the macro level and it's true on the micro level. And so what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're aware of the key initiatives that are underway. The Gates Foundation, either our events or our website or other mechanisms, but also many of the other companies here. We, as I mentioned in my remarks, we focus, but that doesn't mean those are the only issues to work on. And so it's very important that we have that exchange of knowledge about what we're each working on and how we can come together to truly make the whole greater than the sum of the parts.
Eugene?
Jeff, thanks a lot for a great presentation, and I was really moved by your punchline about us working together to improve and save lives.
And Gene, if you don't mind us saying who you
sorry.
Who you represent,
Yes.
that'd be great. Thank you.
Eugene Colker, I'm Chief Data Officer at Seattle Children's, and we also recently started non-for-profit. It's an organization called DELSA, Data Enabled Life Sciences Alliance. So question for you, Jeff. What are your plans, Gates Foundation plans, with regard to data, sharing data among all these different grantees and strategic developments you are planning to have? Thank you.
Well, so the question has to do with our plans at the Gates Foundation related to data and sharing of data. I don't know, coming from the computer industry, we're kind of computer data geeks, so we kind of like data. We like the sharing of information. That was fundamental to a lot of my career in information work, helping lead the creation of Microsoft Office. I think, though, the thing you have to do is you have to look at not just the data, but you have to look at your extrapolation from the data into knowledge and insight. And so that really requires kind of a comprehensive approach. I'll just give you a few examples of the tactical things that we're doing, Gene. One is related to what we're doing on the website, sharing information about our grants and our strategies and what we're learning. One of the key elements of our new campus near the Space Needle is a convening center, and we do a huge number of events where we bring together partners for discussions. So that's a different type of approach. As I've mentioned in my remarks, we have to be a good partner. We have to strive to be a good partner. So I put a very strong emphasis on us getting feedback from our grantees about where we are effective, where we're not as effective, what are their thoughts on how we improve. So essentially what I'm saying is that in order to really exploit data, you have to turn it into information and insight, and you have to take a comprehensive approach to doing it. Some of it comes from sharing information on things like the website. Some of it comes from how you convene and orchestrate the dialogue, and ultimately, though, it comes from having a culture of aspiring to be a good partner and to be very collaborative. Thanks for your question.
Monty.
Hi, Monty Montoya with Sight Life, where we're working to eliminate corneal blindness. Jeff, I know you made the transition from the commercial world of Microsoft into the nonprofit world at the foundation. And increasingly, I'm approached by people, 50-somethings, who want to slow down and transition from a commercial career into the nonprofit sector where they can have an impact. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about your personal transition and what it's been like you, and has it been a slowdown?
Yeah, you should ask Tricia Raikes about that. You know, in my interviews, and this may surprise you because, you know, I've worked with Bill for 30 years, and Melinda, you know, we worked together in her early years at Microsoft. I interviewed for the job. I mean, they were serious about the process, as they should have been. And in my interview with Melinda, one of the things that she really wanted to emphasize to me is that, Jeff, this is no retirement job. She was right. But I never anticipated that. It's not really my personality. My dad ran our farm until he was age 71, and then he continued to work as an agricultural leader across the country. And so it's sort of in my nature to work that way. I wouldn't say that my approach to bringing great talent from business into the work that we do in this sector would be to say that this is your slow down job. I think what it really needs to be is your passion. It needs to be the thing that you want to do at this point in your career to make a difference in the world. And I was unbelievably fortunate, lucky really, to get the opportunity at Microsoft that I did. I mean, I'm a farm kid. I was going to go work for the USDA and ag policy, and I found this thing called VisiCalc and got the opportunity to help create Microsoft Office. And I think pretty legitimately say that was part of changing the world. I feel like at the Gates Foundation, I was again extraordinarily fortunate, lucky, to be given another opportunity to work with a team of people who were committed to helping change the world in a positive way. And so it was really that passion to make a difference. It's that passion to work with smart, energetic people who are results-driven, who want to be a part of the change in the world. That's what drives me to work with a team like that. And I hope that for most of those people from business who want to get involved in philanthropies or nonprofits, that it'll be the passion that draws them in. That would be my number one piece of advice.
Meg?
Good morning, Jeff. Meg O'Connor with Kineta. Kineta is a company working in translational research, and we're focused particularly on antiviral therapeutics. And I'm just wondering, I know the foundation has focused a great deal on vaccines, but I'm sure myself and a lot of others in the audience are curious if you're also interested in therapeutics, if they can make it the last mile. So would you discuss that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Two things. Not only are we're interested in vaccines, in drugs, in diagnostics. I mean, we're interested in ways to help catalyze the creation of the spectrum of interventions that are going to make a difference in health solutions. So answer on number one, absolutely yes. But also the other thing I want to say is that Trevor Mundell brings great expertise in translational medicine. And so we're also in the process right now of really trying to build up our expertise and our partnerships in the area of translational medicine. So that's also a particularly strong interest for us. So thank you very much.
Question over here.
Hi, Jeff. My name's Chris Howard, and I'm from the Seattle Children's Research Institute. I had a question for you about the difficulty you're having developing public-private partnerships and how the Gates Foundation is working with industry to essentially overcome some of those challenges.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, I think I actually will say that I think we're pretty well positioned, Chris, to really help take that on and make a difference. Part of it is we're believers in the private sector. We're believers in capitalism as a very effective mechanism to allocate resources in society to produce goods and services. You have to recognize where it's most effective, and it's most effective when there's a market opportunity that the capitalists can see and take a risk on in order to get a return. What happens, and this is where we feel we have a big role, is what happens is there are market failures. There are those things where there isn't an obvious market opportunity, and that does not draw the private sector in. Take, for example, neglected infectious diseases. The very definition of the phrase neglected is that, not that it's not a big deal, it's a big deal for a huge number of people, it's just a big deal for a huge number of poor people, therefore there's not a market opportunity, therefore the private sector does not get drawn in. So what we try and do in catalytic philanthropy is we try and identify those market failures where we see our social investments, our granting investments as an opportunity to undertake the risk and draw or leverage the private sector R&D in order to make a difference. And so the way I think of it is a three-legged stool where you have the private sector and what it's strong at, the public sector, government in particular, and what they're good at. And typically governments aren't good at wanting to take risk, and the reason is it's your tax dollars. So I think what catalytic philanthropists like the Gates Foundation need to do is to identify where there isn't a market opportunity, where the government isn't likely to take the risk, and where we can take the risk to develop an innovative intervention, have the evidence of that success of that intervention, so that the public sector and or the private sector can scale up and sustain it. That, in a short couple of paragraphs, is the approach of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So we put a high priority on public-private partnership. And sometimes we get a lot of criticism for it. We get criticism for working with pharmaceutical companies. We get criticism for working with large agricultural companies. But we oftentimes find that they're very motivated to want to figure out how to leverage what they do to make a difference for poor people, if we can just help them figure out how to do it. Now, there's the cynics who say, well, they're trying to figure out how to make a profit down the road sometime. You know, maybe that's true in some cases. In a lot of cases, I find that their employees care about the developing world too, and they view it as a good thing to have that as an avenue and outlet. And so we look for those partnerships where there's the right intent, and that the ultimate thing will be to benefit people in the developing world, because that's our audience. Thank you.
Philip?
Thanks, Chris. Mr. Raikes, thanks for your presentation. And while I wouldn't want to place you in a conflict of interest, I'm really curious about your namesake. Tell us about the Raikes Foundation.
Oh, no conflict of interest. The Raikes Foundation is, Trish and I started it, roughly 7 to 10 years ago. Our personal belief is that we hit the lottery with our work at Microsoft, and our responsibility is to be temporary stewards of the wealth that was created and put it back into society. And so that's what the Raikes Foundation is about. Our focus is on the issues of youth and what we can do to help them have an opportunity for better lives, especially youth that are in challenging situations. One of the areas that we've identified that is underfunded is early adolescence, in particular the middle school range. And there are a lot of challenges that kids go through in that range. It's a super important period for brain development, for social development, so on and so forth. So what the Raikes Foundation is doing is underwriting a certain amount of research to understand the kinds of interventions that really help kids develop the right metacognitive and non-cognitive skills that will enhance their success in school and their success in life. How can you turn that into products and practices that will be effective in particular school environments, but also out of school environments, and then figure out how to create an approach that will get our country to emphasize the development of what we call agency, those academic strategies and learning skills that are so important to kids. And so that's the primary focus of the Raikes Foundation. I'm very proud to say that we also do work in youth and young adult homelessness, and my wife was just named a champion of change by the White House and is headed to D.C. today for a meeting tomorrow at the White House and with the Department of Education. And so I'm very proud of the work that we're doing at the Raikes Foundation. So thank you for asking.
Bravo.
Question over here.
My name's Phil Retchman. I'm with Shift Labs. We're a company that's looking to bring human-centered design to low-resource countries for a profit.
Great.
And so my question is, you mentioned some about public-private partnerships with for-profit entities who are sort of doing it as a charitable entrepreneurial sideline, but what's the relationship of for-profit entities who are, as their main line of business, wanting to interact with the foundation?
Well, I'm going to cut the case on that one. As I said earlier, we believe in capitalism, and we think the for-profit approach is a very good one. Our mission is to figure out how to exploit the assets that you've created for profit and turn them into assets for poor people. That's basically what we like to do. If we can figure out how to take the vaccine that was developed for rich kids and figure out how to get it to a price point and a delivery mechanism for poor kids, then we've succeeded. If you figure out ways to develop great products where you can make money off rich people that we can figure out how to exploit in ways that will help poor kids or poor people, then that's what we see as an opportunity. Thank you.
Question here.
I also think the human-centered design field is super important. I'm very interested in what Stanford's doing in that area. I think unfortunately there just is not enough understanding of how to bridge the cultural gaps of understanding for the developing world to the developed world. And so if there's any, to the extent that you want to focus on the developing world, I'd say use your human-centered skill work to really figure out how to put it in an effective context in the developing world. And that is a very, very tough challenge because of those cultural differences. So, thank you. Yes.
Hi, my name's Tony Blau. I'm a hematologist at the University of Washington. About a couple of years ago now, I started a not-for-profit organization that's kind of based on the notion that the way that we're trying to advance cancer treatment is inherently flawed, and creating a new framework that treats cancer as an information problem and tries to bring best-in-the-world resources and place them at the disposal of an individual cancer patient and their oncologist, and then learn from that patient's experiences to add to our collective knowledge about how cancer works and try to make progress in cancer on that front. Great. It has nothing to do with my question. Obviously, heading such an enormous philanthropic organization, it has to be at the very forefront of your mind about how do you get the biggest bang for your buck. And do you think, is there any science to this? Are you better at this now than you were when you started as an organization? And are there general operating principles that change the way that you think about this? And are any of these things transferable to other organizations? And do you collectively talk with each other? I'm thinking of the Robin Hood Foundation in New York, or are there lessons that can help everyone do better?
Yeah, this is a great question. It also happens to be a personal passion of mine, is to figure out how to take what I've learned in business and what I've learned in philanthropy, both in terms of the Raikes Foundation, where I'm a philanthropist, as well as the Gates Foundation, where I'm the CEO, and help raise the overall level and quality of philanthropic impact. I'm going to say something that may be controversial to some of my colleagues, but generally speaking, I guess I'll be the glasses half full. We have a long ways to go in terms of really improving the practices of philanthropy to optimize the impact. I just believe that, given my years of experience both at the Gates Foundation and the Raikes Foundation. A lot of that's good. It's a little bit analogous to what it was like, say, and Peter Drucker and others were trying to encourage good management, good strategic approaches, Michael Porter. You have to take the knowledge from other sectors and how they have driven effectiveness and figure out what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate, and selectively pick the things that are really going to make a difference in philanthropy. And I think we have a long ways to go in philanthropy. I'll just give you one example. One of the first things I did when I came in at the Gates Foundation was to put in place and enhance the strategy development, strategy review process. Because, no strategy, it's like the old saying in the military, no battle plan survives the first contact with an enemy. No strategy survives the first contact with the real world. What you have to do is you have to continuously learn and monitor and adjust, and you have to have good processes that do that. And there was a bit of a perfectionist mentality inside the Gates Foundation where everybody were striving to be perfect. Well, give it up. It's not going to happen. What you have to be good at, or perfect at, if you will, is to understand that nothing will be perfect, and what you have to do is you have to really continue to develop. So, for example, in the foundation, I've introduced some work from Ronald Heifetz out of Harvard called Adaptive Leadership. I've introduced some work from Donella Meadows about complex systems, because effectively we live in complex systems with adaptive leadership challenges. And I'm trying to raise the level of skill within our organization so that we can do that. So those are a few of the examples.
How about between organizations?
Between organizations is equally important. In general, I was disappointed in our strategy work where we were very myopic, parochial. We thought about what we were doing, and I asked people to really think about what all of our partners were doing, do a partner landscape and understand where their strengths are, where our strengths are, how we can work together. Take U.S. education. We may be working in on effective teaching, but there are others who are working on leadership within school systems, and there are other people who are working on early learning, and we're not. We have to really think about the whole and recognize that we are a part of the whole. And I would say that that's one of the things that we're developing. So we put in place some tools now called partner landscaping that help us understand alignment and capacity and where we should put our resources.
So Jeff, we have time for one more question. I'll take executive privilege and ask it, if you don't mind.
Okay.
I mentioned from our vantage point, I see the next 10 to 20 years as being extremely exciting in life sciences and what's coming together in global health, healthcare reform, information technology. Where do you see the next 10 or 20 years? What's your vision and some of the things you see if we're back here 10 years from now that will be accomplished?
Well, certainly in the area of global health, I think that this is going to be a phenomenal decade. Whether it's the decade of vaccines, which we're big believers in, whether it's the work on eradicating polio, whether it's the advances that will come in terms of HIV prevention. I think it's going to be a phenomenal decade in terms of the advances. What I really hope, though, is that in parallel, we're thinking how we increase the overall capacity impact from the sector, building on that last question, really how we all come together in ways that will accelerate the advances that are so necessary in the world. And if we do those two things, if we drive those programmatic advances that I was describing collectively, if we collectively raise our capacity to do even greater work, then you can see a world, 40 years from now where we can not just support 9 billion people, which is the trend line we're on, but we can do it in ways that have much higher equitable access to good health and opportunity. And that ultimately is the mission of the Gates Foundation, is to use our resources to enable all people to have access to healthy and productive lives. And we think that collectively we can work together to be a great partner in doing that. And I hope 10 years from now we have measurable progress on both elements. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the insightful, motivating comments and for spending some time with us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, as a token of our appreciation, Jeff, before you head off the stage, I just want to thank you for spending some time and hopefully in a moment of relaxation.